The text message arrived just as I was buttoning my black shirt. My brother ***, don't bring your family to Dad's funeral. You're not welcome. Dad didn't want you there. ***, I stared at the screen, convinced I had read it wrong. My father had died less than 12 hours earlier. I hadn't even had time to process the call from the hospital, and now my own brother was telling me I wasn't allowed to say goodbye. I read the message again. Then again. There wasn't another explanation. No apology. No, I'm sorry. Just a cold order that felt more like a final eviction from the family I'd spent my entire life trying to belong to. My wife looked up from packing our overnight bags. What's wrong? Without speaking, I handed her my phone. Her expression changed instantly. First confusion, then disbelief. Finally, anger. He can't decide who goes to your father's funeral. I know. I whispered, though I wasn't sure anymore. Growing up, my older brother, Daniel, had always been the golden child. He made the rules. Everyone else followed them. If he said I was selfish, I was selfish. If he said I had started an argument, everyone believed him before I spoke a single word. Somehow, even after we became adults, nothing had changed. Over the years, family gatherings became fewer. Phone calls from my father became almost non-existent. Birthdays passed with silence. Holidays came and went without invitations. Every time I asked Daniel what was going on, he insisted Dad needed space and that I should stop making everything about myself. I wanted to believe him. Now, standing in my kitchen with my father's funeral only hours away, I wondered if every mile that had grown between us had been real or carefully created. I typed a reply. **I'm his son. I'll be there. *3 dots appeared almost immediately. Then another message. *If you show up, don't expect anyone to welcome you. You'll only embarrass yourself. *I locked my phone and placed it on the counter. For a long moment, the room was completely silent. My youngest daughter quietly asked, "Daddy, are we still going?" I looked at my wife, then at the suit hanging by the front door. I didn't care about the inheritance. I didn't care if my brother ignored me. I didn't even care if every relative in that church refused to look me in the eye. I only wanted one chance to stand beside my father's casket and say goodbye. What I didn't know was that before the day was over, a single sentence from Dad's lawyer would change everything my family believed about the last 20 years. Looking back, I realized that the text from Daniel hadn't started the story. It was only the latest chapter. For as long as I could remember, my brother had been the center of my parents' world. Being 3 years older, he seemed to do everything first, and somehow, everything he did was celebrated. When Daniel brought home a report card with mostly B's, Dad took us out for dinner. When I graduated at the top of my class years later, Dad shook my hand and said, "Good job," before asking Daniel how work was going. At first, I convinced myself it didn't matter. Every family has a favorite, right? But the older I got, the harder it became to ignore the pattern. If something broke around the house, Daniel insisted I'd done it. I was punished before anyone asked what had actually happened. If Daniel forgot a birthday or showed up late to dinner, everyone laughed and called him busy. If I missed a family event because of work, I was accused of not caring about the family. It was never about what happened. It was about who everyone believed. Daniel understood that better than anyone. He rarely raised his voice or caused scenes. Instead, he planted small doubts that grew into permanent misunderstandings. He would tell Mom I sounded angry during a phone call when I'd simply been tired. He'd tell Dad I wasn't interested in visiting anymore, even though I'd asked several times when we could get together. Whenever I reached out directly, Dad always seemed distant, almost guarded, as if he already believed I had some hidden motive. For years, I blamed myself. Maybe I hadn't called enough. Maybe I worked too much. Maybe I should have tried harder. So I kept trying. When Dad retired, I mailed him a handwritten letter thanking him for everything he'd done for our family. I never received a response. On his birthday, I sent a framed photo of him with my kids from our last fishing trip together. Weeks passed without even a text. Daniel eventually told me Dad thought the gifts were too little, too late. Hearing that broke something inside me. Still, I didn't argue. I apologized for mistakes I wasn't even sure I'd made because I couldn't bear the thought of losing my father completely. Meanwhile, Daniel's life was quietly financed by my parents. They helped him with the down payment on his house, covered unexpected bills, and even loaned him money for a business that never succeeded. I never asked for financial help. Not because I was proud, but because I didn't want anyone to think I loved my parents for what they could give me. My wife often wondered why I kept reaching out to people who never seemed to reach back. I always gave the same answer. Maybe next time will be different. I didn't know then that someone had been making sure next time never came. After reading Daniel's last message, I almost stayed home. For several long minutes, I sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at my father's obituary on my phone. My wife gently placed a cup of coffee in front of me, but didn't say a word. She knew there wasn't anything she could say that would undo years of hurt. I don't think he ever wanted me, I finally whispered. She reached across the table and took my hand. I don't believe that, she said softly. I think someone wanted you to believe it. I wanted to believe her, but years of rejection had a way of becoming your own inner voice. Long before that funeral, I'd accepted that I wasn't the son my parents bragged about. While Daniel was always invited to family dinners and weekend gatherings, my little family learned to celebrate birthdays, Thanksgiving, and Christmas on our own. At first, it felt lonely. Then it became normal. Money was tight in those years. After leaving my hometown, we rented a small 2-bedroom apartment where the living room doubled as my workspace. The furniture didn't match. The walls were thin enough to hear our neighbors arguing, and every month felt like a careful balancing act between paying bills and buying groceries. I worked wherever I could. During the day, I managed inventory for a local warehouse. In the evenings, I picked up bookkeeping work for small businesses, and on weekends, I repaired computers for friends and neighbors to earn a little extra. The hours were exhausting, but every paycheck meant another month of stability for my wife and our children. Instead of dwelling on everything I'd lost, I focused on building something of my own. Late at night, after everyone else was asleep, I watched online business courses, read books about leadership and personal finance from the public library, and taught myself skills that helped me earn promotions at work. Progress came slowly. One raise, one certification, one opportunity at a time. There were moments when I wanted to call my father just to tell him about a promotion or share a picture of the kids, but I always hesitated. After years of silence, I wasn't sure he wanted those calls anymore. So I poured that energy into my own family instead. I promised myself that my children would never question whether they were loved. Every recital, every soccer game, every school presentation, I was there. I wanted them to grow up knowing they would never have to earn my attention. Looking back, those difficult years shaped me more than comfort ever could. I didn't become stronger because life was fair. I became stronger because, even when I felt forgotten, I refused to let bitterness define me. What I didn't realize was that while I was quietly rebuilding my life, my father had begun asking questions that Daniel could no longer answer, and the truth was finally starting to catch up with him. The morning of the funeral felt strangely quiet. My wife and I drove in near silence, our children staying with her parents for the day. As the church came into view, my stomach tightened. It had been years since I'd stood in front of that building, yet everything looked exactly the same. Everything except my place in it. The moment Daniel spotted me walking toward the entrance, he stormed across the parking lot. I told you not to come. His voice was low enough that only the two of us could hear. You've embarrassed this family enough. I looked past him at the church doors. I'm here for Dad. He didn't want you here. Those words hurt, but they no longer carried the certainty they once would have. For the first time in years, I wondered if they were really my father's or simply Daniel's. Without arguing, I walked around him and entered the church. Heads turned. Some relatives looked surprised. Others avoided eye contact altogether. A few whispered quietly among themselves, and I recognized the same expressions I'd seen my entire life. Judgment before conversation. I took a seat in the last row. I didn't speak. I didn't make a scene. I simply listened as people shared stories about the man I wished I'd known better during his final years. After the service ended, I was preparing to leave when a woman in a dark suit approached me. Are you Michael? I nodded. I'm Mr. Harris's legal assistant. The family attorney has asked that all immediate family members attend the reading of your father's will this afternoon. Before I could answer, Daniel interrupted. That's not necessary, he said quickly. Everything's already been handled. The woman remained perfectly calm. I'm sorry, sir, but your father specifically instructed that your brother be present. Daniel's expression changed for just a second. It wasn't anger. It was panic. That single moment caught my attention. If everything was as simple as he'd claimed, Why did he suddenly look nervous? An hour later, my phone began vibrating. One message after another. Not from friends. Not from distant relatives. From family members who hadn't spoken to me in years. Asterisk, please stay for the lawyer meeting. Asterisk, asterisk, there's something you need to hear. Asterisk, asterisk, your father left instructions that include you. Asterisk, even an aunt who had ignored my calls for nearly a decade sent a short message. Asterisk, don't leave before the reading. Trust me. Asterisk, none of it made sense. For years, I had been treated like an outsider. Now everyone suddenly wanted me to stay. As we drove to the lawyer's office, I kept replaying Daniel's face in my mind. It was the first time I'd ever seen him lose control. And somehow, I had the unmistakable feeling that my father's final wishes were about to reveal a truth my brother had spent years trying to keep buried. The conference room at the lawyer's office was unusually quiet. No one spoke as we took our seats around the long wooden table. Daniel sat closest to the attorney, arms folded confidently, as though he already knew how the afternoon would end. Several relatives offered him sympathetic smiles. I chose a chair near the back, expecting nothing more than a few family keepsakes and another reminder that I had never truly belonged. The attorney, Mr. Collins, adjusted a folder in front of him before looking around the room. Before we discuss Mr. Harris's estate, he said, I have been instructed to read a personal statement he prepared several months before his passing. Every I turned toward him, he unfolded a handwritten letter. If you're hearing this, he began, asterisk, I've had time to reflect on mistakes I can never undo. I allowed myself to believe things about my younger son without asking him if they were true. For that, I am deeply sorry. Asterisk, the room fell completely silent. Daniel shifted in his chair. The attorney continued. Your father became concerned after discovering several unanswered letters addressed to Michael that had never been mailed. He later hired my office to investigate discrepancies involving family communication. Mr. Collins opened another folder. Inside were copies of handwritten letters I had sent years earlier, still sealed in their original envelopes. Birthday cards, Christmas cards, photographs of my children. Even the letter I had written after Dad retired. None of them had ever reached him. There is additional evidence, the attorney said calmly. Phone records showed repeated calls from me that had been blocked after Daniel convinced our father I was only calling to ask for money. Email records revealed messages redirected to an account Daniel controlled while helping Dad manage his computer. Financial documents also confirmed that over the years, my parents had provided Daniel with substantial assistance for his home, debts, and failed business ventures, support they had never hidden from him, but had never fully accounted for when discussing fairness between their sons. Daniel stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. He's twisting everything. Mr. Collins remained composed. No one is twisting anything. These records were independently verified. For the first time in years, no one rushed to defend my brother. My aunt quietly covered her mouth. An uncle lowered his eyes. The confidence Daniel had carried into the room disappeared as the weight of the evidence settled over everyone. Then Mr. Collins closed the first folder and reached for a second. There is one final instruction regarding the estate, he said. It explains why your father changed his will just 6 months before his death. Daniel's face turned pale as the attorney broke the seal on the last envelope. Mr. Collins opened the final envelope and looked around the room before speaking. 6 months ago, Mr. Harris signed a revised will. No one moved. The family home will pass to my younger son, Michael. My personal savings will be divided equally among all of my grandchildren through educational trusts. My older son, Daniel, has already received significant financial assistance during my lifetime, and I consider those gifts part of his inheritance. Daniel shot to his feet. This is insane. He wasn't thinking clearly. Mr. Collins calmly slid several signed documents across the table. The will was witnessed, notarized, and prepared after multiple meetings. Your father was found to be of sound mind. It is legally valid. Daniel looked around the room, expecting someone to support him. No one did. Instead, the silence was broken by my aunt. We believed you, she whispered to Daniel. All these years, we believed you. Another relative slowly turned toward me. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I should have asked for your side instead of accepting what we were told. One by one, more apologies followed. Some were brief. Some came through tears. None of them could return the birthdays, holidays, or family memories my children and I had missed. But for the first time in decades, I no longer felt invisible. Before we left, Mr. Collins handed me one last envelope. It contains a private letter from your father. I waited until I was sitting in my car before opening it. His handwriting was unmistakable. Michael, if I could ask for one more day, I would spend it apologizing to you. I let someone else's voice become louder than yours. I missed years of your life, and I'll always regret that. Thank you for never answering pain with hatred. I hope you'll remember the father I tried to become before it was too late, not only the one who failed you. I folded the letter carefully and sat in silence. For a long time, I had imagined justice as proving everyone wrong. Instead, it arrived as something much quieter. The truth. In the months that followed, I chose not to rebuild relationships out of guilt or obligation. Some relatives stayed in touch, and we slowly created new memories based on honesty rather than assumptions. Others remained distant, and I accepted that not every wound could be repaired. As for Daniel, I wished him no harm. I simply stepped away, because peace doesn't always come from winning. Sometimes, it comes from finally letting go of the need to be accepted by people who never truly saw you. Today, my children know exactly where they belong. They never have to question whether they're loved. And every time I read my father's final letter, I'm reminded that while the truth may arrive late, it still has the power to set a family and a heart free.